Welcome back, everyone. Recently, uranium stocks have had a bit of a pop, and I'm receiving a lot of questions approximately asking what's going on here. So I figured I would make today's update video, late 2020, talk about what's going on, a little bit, few ideas, and some effects that sentiment may have at some point, and something I've just been thinking about a little bit more recently. So as I said, I've been getting a lot of questions, and they're all phrased slightly differently. What's happening? Why now? What news? Well, it's not immensely clear, but I do have a few ideas, and my first instinct was the first idea, but I will cover the news also. Okay, so the thesis, the uranium thesis, part of what I really like about it is it gets a little bit better every day. However, the stocks don't. The stocks are, I mean, it depends which one, but they've mainly, they move up, they consolidate, they move down, they consolidate. But the point is, this consolidation phase, the stock's going sideways, not going anywhere, just kind of determining a price that they're at and waiting for the market signal to say higher or lower. And there were a lot of stocks, a lot of the uranium stocks that looked like they were waiting for a market signal. They were coiling to a large degree. And so what may have happened, and it kind of looks like it kind of spiraled a little bit, is that the market finally decided, okay, we need to move a little bit higher. And how it works sometimes is there's pockets where once it breaks out, you have some people chasing, you have some people, that were short at the top of the range that are covering, and it just kind of it accelerates the speed of the move. And so I'm thinking that part of it is that type of thing and a number of things. And then once you see, XYZ and ABC is moving, well, why not QDX? Well, I don't know, making up tickers here, but if they're the same thing, people see one moving and they buy B because it hasn't moved yet. And so there's a lot of, I feel like part of it on the technical side is that type of thing. Now, there has been a little bit of news. Now, I dislike trading the news, trading the headlines, because that's its own game, and often it's to sell the news, and often there's all sorts of different ways to front run news, pre-react to news. Some people know it's coming, they buy ahead, they sell up. But the little bits of news that have been kind of circling around, on Friday morning, there was talk about the strategic uranium reserve. That's been around for a year now, maybe more. And so it's progressing, and it's progressing slowly, as many things do. And so it's not really, I didn't think of it as really big news. And also, many uranium stocks move to that. In the past, when there's been news about that or someone getting excited about that, it's been the US things. And this was more broad than that, so I don't think that really played that big of a factor. Now, there were also some acknowledgments about uranium, some, brokers after the move, because after the move, they upped the price targets. And, there was a well-written Zero Hedge article talking, it wasn't, there was, forgive me, I don't remember who was quoted on it, but someone wrote a really a very thorough for that type of thing, write up on the uranium thesis. And so that, more people get some recognition. There was a second case at Cigar Lake. Now, it was delayed from the first, so it doesn't seem like really, we don't know. We don't know. For a while, I haven't really thought that they would shut down again if they didn't really feel like they have to. Second case, but I lean towards that they won't still. But if it starts becoming 3, 5, 7, then we may like reevaluate things there. But for a while, I've been adamant that I didn't think they would. That being said, Saskatchewan's been unfortunately not really well controlled. I mean, it's a hard thing to control, but it has been worse than ever, unfortunately. So how that goes, I don't know. The other thing, and this was yesterday evening, so that would be Monday night, I think. I don't know, days blur together. There was a news item that Ukraine shut down its uranium mines. I think it said all of them. That's because of lack of funding was the reason. That's 2 to 3 million pounds depending on the year. Now that's not a ton, and it's not necessarily permanent. It is something. I don't think it's enough in, for the brief period so far that it would have been down. I don't think that's enough to warrant this move in the market alone, but it is something. So another question that I have seen people talking about, not asking me this yet at least, is are the equities leading the metal? Because in many bull markets, the equities that some have leverage or the equities often pre-act. It's probably not a word, but they often lead the metal. In this case, though, I don't know if that's happening because, yes, I would have expected the price to potentially move up in the seasonally strong period, but we kind of skipped that this year. I mean, we didn't. The seasonally strong period is a number of months. It didn't start when it normally does. Maybe it's late. I don't know. I would have thought, I was thinking that there was a catalyst and a tight enough market for that type of thing to happen. And that type of thing might bring with it the equities moving up this much, if not more. But that hasn't happened yet. I don't know. Maybe it will soon. There are a number of things coming up in the next 4 months that are fundamentally bullish. But like I said, it gets a little bit better every day, and those aren't exactly new. So maybe it is leading the spot price. The spot price is a ridiculous price, but maybe it is leading the price. Now, if we're talking, is it possible that this is a short lead or a long lead? I mean, normally when we're talking leading the price, we're talking short. However, is it possible that the price doesn't go up for a few more months? Yeah, it's possible. Of course it's possible. And the one point of potential caution I might want to make to some people that are thinking, well, what's the difference leaving now, buying now, if it's going to go up in a few months? I mean, it could go up tomorrow, but the difference is, or the point is, a lot can happen in a few months. That could be taken in either sense, really. So just have that in mind. So a little bit on the subject of seasonality. Is this seasonality? I mean, it could be, but normally seasonality begins approximately after Labor Day, approximately after the WNA symposium, both of which, well, Labor Day happened, but the seasonality didn't start after, and the WNA symposium didn't really happen the same way this year. And so maybe it's that being moved to later in the year, but that normally is accompanied by price. And here, because the price hasn't moved yet, at least, if it is seasonality, which again it very well may be, could that be a shifting in sentiment? Because It's weird. Sometimes you look and it seems like there's a lot of positive sentiment, and sometimes it seems like there's not a lot of, or it seems like everyone's negative. The funds, the physical funds, which are in some ways the most direct link to sentiment, market can't find enough people to buy the funds at their net asset value, so they trade at a discount. So that discount has narrowed a bit in the last few days, but it's still cheaper than buying it on the spot market. So if it is seasonality, if it is a changing sentiment, that could lead to a few other things. The other thing I've seen people thinking or suggesting is that it is someone positioning, someone maybe of size, maybe some fund. And the one thing I would say to that is probably some, probably not all. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons for sudden volume, all of a sudden, breaks through a point, people chasing, people covering, all sorts of things. And there's a lot of small traders out there also, and together they probably make up a lot of volume. So there's probably a bit of positioning, there's probably a bit of trading, and it's a market. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of little behind the scenes people have their reasons for entering a trade now, exiting a trade now. Like, it's hard to pin down a move to one thing. Now, this is along the lines of one of the other thoughts I was having. People think, I've seen people say, that this may be someone big positioning in the sector. It's not someone big positioning in the sector, because this sector is tiny, and that may at some point come with its own set of, well, its own tail risk, if you will. Because when we're looking at a fundamental bleed through of sentiment, I'm going to run through a little bit how that if people got bullish on, let's say, uranium, and it got expressed through Uranium Participation Corp or Yellowcake, that has the potential to actually bleed into fundamental demand. So I did mention this on Twitter a few days ago, but going back to 2 years ago, when there was much more available above ground uranium, sector had ticked off the bottom, but some people got a bit bullish. Uranium Participation Corp was trading at, well, above NAV for a while. People thought it was a good idea to invest in uranium. Probably was. Bit early, it seems, but so Yellowcake raised funds and bought 10 million pounds of uranium because it was there. Could something like that happen again? It could. All that would be needed would the Uranium Participation Corp or Yellowcake trade at a premium to their net asset value. Then it would make sense for them to issue shares, buy more uranium. Could they buy 10 million pounds either on the spot market or from someone holding uranium that they wanted to get rid of now? Doubtful. Now, if you're thinking, okay, how much, 10 million pounds of uranium, what's that, $300 million? Yeah, approximately. And to give you a concept of why I think this is too small for the market and that creates its own risk. What is $300 million? That's 4 minutes of Tesla trade volume, for example. So if we're talking about a stock that gets hot and what type of money the market may want to, throw at it, $300 million, I wish I had it, first of all. would love to have 300 million, but for the market, it's really not that much. And it's very questionable if, if you went into the spot market with $300 million, it would not end well for the spot market. I mean, or it would, depending on where you're hoping. But it's not a lot of money, and yet it is a lot of money in this market. And I know it's not the same talking about the volume of one stock trading versus fundamental money going into another stock via some off-market placement or at the market share issuance. They really should have one. I'm not sure if they do. Anyway, but there's all sorts of hot money out there. There's all sorts of trades and people trying to make money by squeezing something, or people suddenly like some stock that's been out of favor for a decade, or whatever types of thing, because there's a story about it's the future. And remember the gamma squeeze? I mean, like, looking at what that would mean if Wall Street Bets or whatever it is decided to try to do that type of thing on like Uranium Participation Corp, which I mean I think is one of like 2 or maybe 3 uranium names that has options listed on it. It's like that could, things $500 million. I mean, like, there's not $1 billion worth of uranium available. But, if that type of thing happened, it could cause some serious problems. And that's becoming a risk. If the funds trade at a premium to their NAV, it makes sense for them to sell shares. And the ironic thing about if that were to happen in Participation Corp, for example, is that this demand, they would, like, it's worth, I don't know, $5 Canadian per share. That's what its NAV is. If it traded at 6, they issue shares, buy uranium. Worst case, they push the price of uranium up, they push their NAV up. I mean, it's ironic, but a gamma squeeze could turn into a real supply squeeze. But I mean, this is just the type of risk that needs to now be, I mean, not considered, but it's the type of thing that, because the market has waited so long to recover, it's possible. It becomes possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's something to think about. So I do know there are people who may not understand what I just said. And for those of you that did, that was really all I wanted to talk about. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time. For those of you that are confused with the numbers that I was talking about, with the NAV and words like that, I thought I would quickly explain how the uranium holding companies, Uranium Participation Corp and Yellowcake, how they work. So in this example, I'm going to use a similar company called Uranium Holding Corp. It's exactly the same, except this one only exists in my mind and starts with round numbers, if you know what I mean. So for simplicity's sake, Uranium Holding Corp holds 15 million pounds, let's say, and that's should be worth approximately $450 million. And we have 3 units of uranium per share. So if the market decides that this company should be worth 300 million, what we do is we would sell 1/3 of our uranium and buy back half the shares. So instead of 3 uranium per share, you have 2 uranium per half share, or 4 uranium per share, thus increasing the value by selling uranium. Not buying, but we increase it by selling because the market gave us that opportunity. Versus, let's say it trades at a premium. So let's say nothing changed except market sentiment, and now the market says this same asset is worth $600 million. This happens, I mean, it's happened in the past to a degree like this, and it happens with numerous financial instruments out there when sentiment swings. So in this case, what we do is we'd sell 600 million in stock, so we'd increase the share count by 100%, and we'd use that $600 million to buy physical uranium, so we'd increase our uranium by 133%, which is more than 100%, so we increase our uranium per share from 3 to 3.495. And so this is how the math basically works for when we're talking about companies using their shares as a currency and the market just setting the value of that currency instead. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I know that's not a great answer or a particularly cogent rant for that matter, but why today? Why not? Would it make you feel better if it was next month? I mean, it doesn't matter. Um, the fundamentals should eventually catch up and take the lead of where we are now. So it all becomes a question of when, what's the risk, what's the reward, and what makes sense for you. Well, anyway, again, never investment advice, but have a great day until next time. Cheers.